This is Rainy Night Horrors. Outside, the storm brews, and with it comes something darker. Every drop masks a sound, every shadow holds a shape. You're not imagining it. You're hearing the truth. Listen closely. It's already here. Tuesday yielded the image at 17 minutes past 9 in the evening. A tremor seized my hand the moment the photograph materialized on my laptop's illuminated screen. There I lay, captured in the intimate vulnerability of sleep, mouth agape beneath the familiar blue landscape of my comforter, pulled precisely to my chest. Through the bedroom window behind me, the night pressed in, an inky void. The digital timestamp, stark and unforgiving, declared it taken 3 days prior, at the ungodly hour of 3:44 a.m. Solitude has been my only roommate in this one-bedroom apartment for 4 years. The camera, the instrument of this violation, had languished in my desk drawer, inert for weeks, until I'd resurrected it for a weekend escape to Colorado. My throat constricted, dry as dust, as I navigated back through the image gallery. 68 exposures in total, 57 chronicling the rugged majesty of the Rockies, 10 documenting a convivial brewery tour in Denver, and then this singular, chilling portrait of my unconscious self. The camera's internal memory offered no comfort, displaying an unbroken sequence, devoid of deletions or chronological anomalies. I rose from the desk chair, my legs strangely uncooperative, threatening to buckle. Suddenly, the familiar confines of my living room felt suffocating, the air thick and overwarm. A pilgrimage to the bedroom door confirmed the deadbolt was firmly shut, the security chain securely nestled in its track. Then, the windows, each one latched tight from within, screens unblemished. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic pulse echoing in the hollow of my throat. Returning to the laptop, I summoned the image once more, magnifying its unsettling clarity. Pixel by pixel, the truth sharpened, taken from perhaps 6 feet away, precisely at the foot of my bed. The perspective was unnervingly level, as if someone had stood there, camera held steady at chest height. The timestamp had to be corrupted. Logic desperately clung to this flimsy explanation. Yet, a swift review of the preceding travel photos dismantled that hope. Sunrise bleeding over mountain peaks on Saturday morning, my friend Leo grinning with a thumbs up at the brewery entrance later that afternoon, the spectral form of an elk glimpsed on Sunday's hike. Each bore the correct temporal signature. My phone felt alien in my trembling hand as I dialed Leo, disregarding the lateness of the hour. "Hello?" His voice was thick, dredged from sleep. "Leo, I need you to do something. Remember the brewery Saturday. What time did we actually get there?" "What? Elias, why are you—" "Please," I cut in, the plea raw. "Just check your photos. Find the time." Muffled sounds of fumbling reached me across the line. Hang on. Okay, got it. Took a selfie out front. Says 2:15 p.m. A perfect match to my camera's own record. The internal clock was functioning flawlessly. I terminated the call without further explanation. the silence amplifying the frantic rhythm of my own breathing. A methodical, near-maniacal search commenced. Closets flung open, the void beneath the bed probed. Nothing disturbed, no tangible evidence of intrusion. Yet the photograph screamed otherwise. Someone had infiltrated my sanctuary, stood in my bedroom as I slept, retrieved my camera from its resting place, captured my slumbering form, and then meticulously erased their presence, returning everything to its exact location. Remaining here was unthinkable. Keys, wallet, shoes. The motions were automatic, propelling me towards the exit. But I halted at the threshold, a fresh wave of ice washing over me. What if they were still observing, waiting just outside, anticipating this very flight? My hand shook violently as I snatched up the phone again, dialing the 3 digits that felt both inadequate and essential. 911, what is your emergency? I need to report a break-in. My voice sounded foreign, stretched thin and high. Someone was inside my apartment while I was asleep. They took a picture of me. Are you in immediate danger, sir? Is the individual still in the residence? I don't know. I don't think so. But someone was definitely here 3 days ago. I just discovered the photo. The dispatcher, calm and procedural, collected my details, promising officers would investigate. I remained tethered to the line, a statue in my brightly lit living room, every mundane sound amplified into a potential threat. The refrigerator's low hum, the sigh of a passing car, the building's heating system clicking to life like a sinister mechanism. 15 minutes stretched into an eternity before 2 uniforms arrived. Officer Reyes, young, perhaps late 20s, possessed sharp, dark eyes and an air of alert focus. His partner, Officer Gable, was older, heavier, his temples dusted with gray, his expression etched with weary patience. They conducted a thorough sweep while I hovered in the hallway, feeling strangely exposed. No signs of forced entry, Gable reported upon their return, his voice flat. Doors and windows are secure, locks and frames intact. I presented the image on my laptop. Reyes leaned in, scrutinizing the digital ghost, while Gable made notations in a small pad. And you're certain no one else has access? Gable inquired, his gaze steady. No spare keys distributed to friends, family, recent maintenance visits, landlord inspections. No one, I insisted. Haven't had a visitor in a month except Leo, and he was with me in Colorado when this timestamp indicates it was taken. They documented my statement, photographed the image on the screen, but their skepticism was palpable, a quiet judgment hanging in the air. Objectively, it must have seemed trivial. A single, inexplicable photograph, no theft, no damage, no broken locks. They pledged to file a report, to request increased patrols, but conceded that without tangible evidence, their options were severely limited. After their departure, the silence descended again, heavier than before. I sat numbly at my desk, the photo still glowing on the screen, a mocking testament to my violated peace, my own sleeping face, oblivious. Someone had stood mere feet away, wielding my own camera. Mechanically, I began retracing digital steps, seeking other anomalies. Browser history, unremarkable. Email logs, clean. Phone activity, normal. Until my eyes snagged on the recent calls list. An outgoing call. 3 days ago. Timed at 3:41 a.m. Mere minutes before the photograph's timestamp. The number was unfamiliar. Unsaved. A tremor ran through me as I transcribed the digits, feeding them into the void of an online search. Nothing. The number yielded no identity. The impulse to dial it warred with a paralyzing fear. What if they answered? What would I even utter? Rationalizations flickered and died. Sleepwalking. I never had. A forgotten spare key. To whom? And for what conceivable purpose? The questions multiplied, breeding more uncertainty. How did they pinpoint the camera's location? How did they navigate my bedroom? A space I knew intimately, without rousing me. I'm a notoriously light sleeper. The faintest creak usually jolts me awake. Around 4 a.m, sheer exhaustion began to erode the adrenaline's sharp edge. Sleep was inevitable, yet the thought of returning to my bed, to that spot, made my skin crawl. I retrieved a blanket and pillow, retreating to the living room couch, arranging myself to command a view of both the front door and the shadowed hallway leading to the bedroom. A fragile bastion against the unseen. I must have succumbed, drifting into uneasy slumber because sunlight slicing through the blinds eventually startled me awake. For a fleeting, blessed second, normalcy reigned. Then, the previous night's horrors crashed back in. I called in sick to work, a hollow excuse, and spent the morning orchestrating fortifications. A locksmith regarded me with bemused curiosity as I insisted on supplementing the deadbolt with a keypad lock. Security cameras were ordered, one for each room, covering every entrance. While awaiting their arrival, I probed the mystery of the pre-dawn phone call again. Dialing the number resulted only in a generic, automated voicemail greeting. A paid reverse lookup service proved equally fruitless, an unregistered, prepaid device. That night, the bedroom remained forbidden territory. I camped on the couch once more, laptop a vigilant companion, cycling obsessively through the photo and the call log, searching for a revelation that refused to surface. The subsequent days dissolved into a fugue state of paranoia and sleep deprivation. The security cameras, upon arrival, were installed with meticulous haste, their unblinking lenses strategically positioned. Checking the feeds became a compulsive ritual. I developed a new habit, photographing each room before leaving, comparing the images upon my return, hunting for infinitesimal displacements. My friends perceived the shift. Leo's inquiries about the brewery call, about my frayed state, went unanswered. How could I articulate the sheer insanity? Someone broke in, took nothing, left no trace, except for a single photograph of me sleeping. It sounded unhinged, even whispered in the privacy of my own mind. A week after the initial discovery, while reviewing the endless stream of security footage, a flicker caught my eye, the camera monitoring the bedroom window. At 2:13 a.m., a brief, indistinct movement, rewinding, playing frame by agonizing frame, revealed a dark shape momentarily obscuring the view. Too swift, too amorphous to identify, but undeniably present. Another call to the police yielded only frustration. The footage, they deemed, was too ambiguous, lacking evidentiary value. Officer Reyes, his voice tinged with professional sympathy, gently suggested I consider seeking help for anxiety, offering the number for a counseling service. His advice was ignored. My focus narrowed, intensifying on security. Motion sensors were affixed to every window. The camera and its memory cards were relegated to a newly purchased safe. A baseball bat became my bedside companion on the couch. 2 weeks post-discovery, I was a ghost, haunting my own apartment, barely functional. Work had been attended sporadically. Food held little appeal. Every creak and groan of the building sent jolts of adrenaline through me. Sleep, when it came, was populated by nightmares, waking to the silent presence of someone standing over me, camera raised. Then came the second photograph, unearthed during my nightly ritual of checking the camera's memory card before securing it in the safe. Timestamp 4:12 a.m. that very morning. It depicted me asleep on the living room couch, cocooned in the blanket, the laptop screen casting an eerie glow beside me. The newly installed security cameras showed nothing. The motion sensors remained silent. The fortified locks were undisturbed, but the true horror lay in the details. Zooming in, I could discern the image displayed on the laptop screen within the photo. It was the first photograph, the one of me in bed. My unseen visitor hadn't just returned. They had watched me obsessing over the initial intrusion and documented it. The apartment became instantly untenable. I threw essentials into a bag, fleeing to the sterile anonymity of a hotel across town. But as I sat on the edge of the unfamiliar bed, the chill returned, deeper this time. What if I had been followed? What if this semblance of safety was merely another stage, set by them? I called Leo, the dam finally breaking. I recounted everything, the words tumbling out in a torrent of fear and disbelief. He listened, blessedly silent, then firmly insisted I come stay with him and his wife. I agreed, extracting a promise that he would keep this madness confidential. The following morning, I returned to my apartment for more clothes, for my laptop. The instant I pushed the door open, a wrongness permeated the air. Nothing seemed overtly disturbed, yet the atmosphere felt altered, charged. Bat gripped tightly. I moved through the rooms, a hunter in my own home, checking closets, peering into shadows. Everything appeared untouched, normal, until I reached the bedroom. There, propped against my pillow, sat my camera. The camera I had explicitly left behind, locked securely in the safe. A quick check confirmed the safe remained locked, inviolate. The security feeds showed no entry, no presence. The motion sensors hadn't breathed a whisper of alert. Yet, impossibly, someone had been inside. Again. My hands shook so violently, I could barely lift the device. Powering it on, navigating to the memory card's contents. A new photo resided there, taken barely an hour before my arrival. It showed my empty hotel room, the rumpled bed, my overnight bag slumped on the floor, my phone plugged into the wall beside the nightstand. I dropped the camera as if it were burning hot. I ran through the apartment, down the hallway, not stopping until I burst out into the parking lot and fumbled my way into the car. As the engine roared to life, my phone vibrated. A text message, unknown number, containing a single, terrifying attachment, a photograph of me, captured moments ago, fleeing through the apartment building's lobby, taken from an unseen vantage point near the entrance. I drove directly to the police station. Officer Reyes was on duty. This time, the story, corroborated by the impossible camera placement and the chilling text, commanded his full attention. Officers were dispatched to my apartment, to the hotel. My camera, my phone, were taken as evidence. They dusted for prints, swabbed for DNA, interviewed hotel staff, questioned neighbors. The result was a void. My fingerprints and mine alone. No foreign DNA. Security footage yielded nothing suspicious. Hotel employees recalled no unusual individuals. The number that sent the text message was already disconnected. A digital ghost. That was 3 months ago. I reside now in the spare room at Leo and his wife's house. My cameras are gone, disposed of. My phone number is new. A therapist specializing in trauma and stalking guides me through the wreckage. Progress, she calls it. Yet, sleep remains elusive, preceded by a ritualistic checking of locks and windows, multiple times. Doubt sometimes whispers. Was it a breakdown? A fugue state? Is there a mundane explanation obscured by my terror? But then, the image of my own sleeping face surfaces in my mind, so utterly peaceful, so profoundly unaware. And the certainty returns. Someone, somewhere, possesses a collection of unseen photographs. Someone capable of bypassing any lock, any sensor, leaving no trace but chilling digital proof. Someone who, I feel with a certainty that chills me to the bone, is still watching, patiently waiting for the perfect moment to reveal the next frame. I don't capture moments anymore. Tape obscures my phone's lens. I'm learning to navigate the world under the constant, invisible weight of being observed. But every night, drifting in the fragile space between wakefulness and sleep, a single question haunts me. Will dawn bring another photograph? And sometimes, in that liminal quiet, I could swear I hear it. The faint, sharp click of a camera shutter cutting through the darkness. The bedrock of my perception, the solidity I once ascribed to sight and sound and touch, began its slow dissolution the day I took possession of that solitary house, nestled high in the mountains. Now, certainty feels like a forgotten language. Upon arrival, the structure presented an unassuming face, a modest porch, a broad living space flanked by a pair of bedrooms, and a constricted staircase ascending to the upper floor. Its walls were stark plains, its floors aged timber planks worn smooth by time, the window frames weathered relics. Nothing in its architecture screamed peculiarity, yet its isolation was profound, the nearest dwelling a 20-minute crawl down a rutted dirt track. Here, I anticipated the sanctuary of silence, the stillness required for my work. A profound miscalculation. My initial day unfolded in the mundane rhythm of unpacking. Cartons yielded clothes, stacks of books, my laptop, essentials only. Ornamentation held no appeal. Simplicity was the aim. I wrestled with window sashes, confirming their movement, tested taps until water sputtered forth. The pump grumbled, a faint metallic rattle beneath the floorboards, but delivered sufficient pressure for a hasty shower. Outside, I surveyed the perimeter, the towering evergreen sentinels that groaned and swayed in the wind. The the sharp incline behind the house. A cool breeze carried the scent of damp earth and decaying pine needles, chilling the skin on my face. Twilight found me bone-weary from maneuvering boxes and nudging sparse furniture into place. On a temperamental electric stove, one burner stubbornly inert, I prepared a simple meal of pasta. Seated at a plain wooden table in the kitchen, the silence amplified the sounds of my own chewing into unsettling echoes within the vacant room. After clearing the plate into the sink, wiping my hands, a sense of normalcy flickered. Then, a soft thump. It originated near the hallway, arching towards the living room. Subtle, like a small object dislodged and meeting the floor. My first thought, shifting contents within a precariously stacked box. Rising, I activated the living room light and scanned the space. Unopened cartons remained clustered near a bookshelf, seemingly stable. A thin draft snaked from beneath the front door. The temperature outside had plummeted. Dismissing the sound as nerves frayed by solitude and unfamiliarity, I secured the front door lock, extinguished the living room light, and began the ascent upstairs. The staircase complained under my weight, each tread groaning with disproportionate volume in the profound quiet. In the designated bedroom, I positioned a small lamp, placed my phone on the nightstand, and sank onto the mattress. Scrolling through messages yielded nothing. No signal penetrated these walls. I mentally flagged the need to hunt for reception outdoors later. Leaving the bedroom door ajar, I switched off the lamp and surrendered to the bedding. Sleep, however, remained elusive. Around the stroke of midnight, a faint scraping sound dragged me from the precipice of slumber. It emanated from just outside my bedroom door, a persistent, dragging friction, as if something heavy were being laboriously pulled across the wooden floor. I bolted upright, heart hammering against my ribs, mouth instantly parched. Holding my breath, straining to hear, I waited. The scraping ceased, my gaze fixed on the dark rectangle of the open doorway. The hallway beyond was void, utterly lightless. A distinct chill permeated the room, raising goose flesh on my arms, prickling the hairs at my nape. The impulse to flick on the lamp warred with a deeper reluctance, a fear of confronting whatever lingered beyond the threshold. Perhaps a branch scraping the siding, I reasoned, or a loose piece of gutter rattling in the night breeze. After several minutes steeped in absolute silence, I swung my legs out of bed, crept to the hallway, and fumbled along the wall until my fingers found the switch. The light flickered, momentarily threatened, then held, illuminating the narrow passage. Nothing. The floorboards lay bare, marked only by old scuffs and the grain of the wood. A quick survey confirmed the guest bedroom door remained shut, the bathroom door open to reveal emptiness. Retreating to my room, I attempted sleep once more, but relaxation was impossible, vigilance having taken root. Morning arrived, finding me stiff-necked and shadowed beneath the eyes from a night devoid of true rest. Descending the stairs for coffee, I confirmed the front door's lock remained engaged. Through the adjacent window, sunlight spilled across the distant peaks, painting the dense pine forests in shades of emerald and charcoal, while wisps of cloud drifted lazily across the vast indifferent sky. I sought solace in these mundane details, forcing calm. Yet, crossing the living room, a new creak protested beneath my feet, seemingly originating from the subfloor. Old houses groan, I told myself, dismissing the unsettling resonance. The bulk of the day was consumed by project notes, my laptop humming softly on the kitchen table. I remained attuned to any aberrant sounds, but only the sighing wind in the pines and the refrigerator's periodic cycling broke the quiet. As late afternoon bled towards evening, some of the tension eased. Perhaps last night had merely been an overactive imagination fueled by isolation. But with the approach of dusk, a familiar heaviness settled in my chest, an inexplicable dread of the encroaching night. I found myself pacing the living room, compulsively checking window latches, testing door locks, flicking light switches on and off in a futile ritual of reassurance. Once the sun dipped below the ridgeline, I banished the shadows, activating every lamp, every overhead fixture in the kitchen, living room, and hallways. I craved illumination in every corner. Methodically, I moved through each room, a self-imposed inspection tour aimed at proving the house's emptiness. Closet doors were pulled wide upstairs, the shower curtain in the bathroom swished aside, all vacant. Afterwards, I sat at the kitchen table with a sandwich, my appetite stolen by a knot of anxiety. Half eaten, it lay abandoned when a tapping began at the living room window. Irregular, distinct. Tap, tap. Pause. Tap. My chest constricted. Rising slowly, heart accelerating, I stared towards the living room. The tapping persisted briefly, then fell silent. Turning the corner, I approached the window, seeing only the lamp's reflection staring back from the dark glass. Outside, night had swallowed the landscape. Leaning closer, I scanned the immediate vicinity. No errant branch seemed capable of producing such a deliberate rhythm. A cold sweat beaded on my forehead. My breathing grew shallow. Wind, I desperately rationalized. An insect, a small nocturnal bird. Stepping outside through the front door, phone flashlight cutting a nervous beam, I confronted the chill night air and the oppressive silence. Circling to the side of the house, I illuminated the area around the window. Nothing. No dangling branch, no discernible source for the sound. A profound unease prickled my skin, a sense of being exposed in the vast darkness. I retreated quickly indoors, resolving to remain awake. Another cup of coffee brewed, its steam a fragile anchor in the tense quiet. Finding a single bar of reception in a corner of the kitchen, I saw a message from my friend, Maya, asking how I was settling in. My fingers trembled as I typed a terse, reassuring lie. All good here. Placing the phone down, I watched the steam curl from my mug, the frantic pulse in my ears, drowning out the refrigerator's hum. Around 10, the hallway stirred again. Footsteps, but lighter than mine, almost tentative, pacing slowly along the corridor floor. My muscles seized, gooseflesh erupted anew, breath held captive in my lungs, mouth dry as dust. I rose from the chair and edged towards the living room entrance. The footsteps halted. Peering around the corner, I saw only the illuminated empty hallway. Then, a soft rustling, like fabric brushing against a surface, though no source was visible. My skin felt icy despite the lit rooms, my eyes strained, watering slightly. It was then I noticed it, a subtle distortion shimmering at the far end of the corridor, near the staircase base. Less a shape, more a wavering in the air itself, like heat haze rising from summer asphalt, yet emanating a palpable cold. I blinked hard, but the anomaly persisted, seeming to sway, to shift subtly side to side. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic, captive bird. I tried to speak, but my throat closed tight. "Hello?" The word emerged, cracked, fragile. The shimmer flickered, intensified for a heartbeat, then dissolved, leaving the corridor starkly empty once more. I remained rooted, the echo of my pulse pounding in my ears, a visceral knot tightening in my stomach. What had I witnessed? Part of me screamed to flee, to abandon this place, but another, deeper instinct held me fast. This was my house now. I had to understand. Approaching the stairs, I flipped the switch for the second-floor light and called out again, louder this time. Silence answered. I ascended, each step a conscious effort, listening intently. The familiar creaks accompanied my climb. Reaching the landing, I surveyed the upper hallway. Empty. Both bedroom doors stood open. The guest room contained only a few stacked boxes, no furniture. Shining my phone's light into its corners revealed nothing but dust motes dancing in the beam. Yet, the fine hairs on my arms prickled upright. I pulled the guest room door closed and retreated to my own bedroom, sinking onto the edge of the mattress, fighting for breath. Thoughts raced, a chaotic jumble of denial and dawning acceptance. I knew what I'd seen, something intangible, elusive, yet undeniably present, capable of sound and movement. Its meaning remained terrifyingly obscure. My chest felt constricted, the throb of my pulse now palpable in my throat. Rubbing my eyes, desperate for clarity, I heard it, a soft whisper directly behind me. A single, drawn-out syllable, unintelligible, but unmistakably close. I leapt up, spinning around to confront emptiness. My heart slammed against my sternum. I scanned the floor, the walls, searching for any sign. The air near the foot of the bed felt distinctly colder. My breathing hitched. Backing away slowly, I stepped into the hall and pulled my bedroom door shut, leaning against the wood, feeling my legs tremble beneath me. A plan, however rudimentary, was necessary. This presence, this thing, seemed intent on making itself known. Calm, I decided, was the strategy. Observe. Wait for another sign. Descending the stairs again, legs unsteady, palms slick against the railing, I left every light blazing. The living room glowed warmly. The corridor lamp cast stark shadows. The kitchen remained brightly lit. I returned to the kitchen table and waited, stomach churning, the image of the hallway distortion replaying relentlessly in my mind. An hour crept by in silence. A fragile sense of ease began to settle, only to be shattered when the overhead kitchen light flickered. Once, twice, then steadied. My gaze shot upward, nerves jangling. Then, from the living room's direction, another thump, softer this time, more akin to a muffled knock. Rising, I moved into the living room. The lamp illuminated the couch and coffee table. Nothing seemed disturbed. My eyes fell on the small closet door tucked beneath the staircase. It was slightly ajar. I distinctly remembered closing it earlier. Now, a gap of several inches beckoned. Heartbeat quickening, I approached, my hand clammy as it closed around the cool metal knob. Pulling the door open, I swept the phone's flashlight beam inside. Shelves held cleaning supplies, a few empty cartons. One box lay on the floor, tipped onto its side. Kneeling, I saw it was empty, but clearly displaced. A faint rustling whispered from behind the remaining boxes. I directed the light into the recess. Nothing. As I straightened, my gaze caught movement in the mirror hanging on the opposite wall. A fleeting shape reflected behind me near the end of the couch. I whipped around, flashlight beam stabbing the space. The couch stood empty. Yet, for a split second, I perceived a humanoid outline. Something crouched low beside the furniture. My eyes stung with fear, my chest tightening painfully. I froze, listening. Silence reigned. Then, a subtle shift in the air. A cool current brushing past my left shoulder, gentle but distinct enough to stir my hair. My pulse surged violently. I spun again, flashlight beam cutting frantic arcs through empty space. My mouth was desert dry. Swallowing felt difficult. Adrenaline thrummed, a painful throb behind my temples. I had to speak again. "What do you want?" The question emerged thin, trembling. My hands shook. Addressing the empty air felt absurd, yet instinct demanded it. Seconds stretched into silence. Then, a faint scratching sound, dragging across the wood floor. From the corridor again, my stomach plummeted. Cautiously, I walked towards the hallway entrance, acutely aware of each footfall on the protesting boards. Near the threshold, faint, fresh marks marred the floor's surface, shallow scratches in the varnish. Kneeling, I touched them. Superficial, yes, but undeniably new. A chill traced its way up my spine. Something had made these. Standing, I peered down the illuminated corridor. My mouth felt tacky. I forced slow, measured breaths against rising panic. The air itself seemed to change, growing heavier, dense, pressing in from all sides. I clenched my fists, seeking an anchor. My heart beat a frantic tattoo against my ribs, loud in my own ears. And then I saw it again. A silhouette coalescing before me. Not solid, not clearly defined, but an unmistakable outline, tall and unnervingly thin, shifting, swaying side to side with a slow, hypnotic rhythm. The urge to bolt warred with a paralyzing fascination. I stared, throat constricted, mind racing. Taking a single, shaky step forward, the silhouette retreated, gliding backwards along the wall. The corridor lights flickered erratically. My palms were slick with sweat. A shaky breath escaped my lips. It felt like guidance. Hesitantly, I followed, step by uncertain step, drawn towards the base of the staircase. There, abruptly, it vanished. I stood trembling, arm outstretched towards empty space, sensing not malice, but purpose. A faint knock echoed from above, somewhere on the second floor. My own intuition screamed, "Go!" Legs shaking, I climbed the stairs once more. The upper hallway light remained steady. I turned towards the guest room. The door, which I had closed, now stood shut again. From within, a soft shuffling sound reached my ears. Palms damp, I twisted the knob and pushed the door inward. The boxes I'd left neatly stacked were now scattered, one overturned, its contents, blank sheets of paper intended for notes, spilled across the floorboards. They weren't randomly strewn. They formed a distinct, unsettling pattern, a rough circle. My body tensed. Then I saw it, a single sheet pinned beneath the corner of an upright box. On it, a few frantic scribbled lines, random marks at first glance, yet possessing a strange intentionality. My stomach clenched. My hand trembled as I reached down and picked it up. The marks formed no recognizable letters or symbols, but felt undeniably like an attempt at communication. My scalp tingled with a primal awareness. Spinning around, The certainty of not being alone was absolute, though the room remained visibly empty. Doubt was no longer a luxury I could afford. Something resided here. It made noises, left physical traces, moved objects, and now seemed to be attempting contact. Rationality urged flight, a desperate retreat to the world I understood. Yet, I couldn't leave. Not yet. The remainder of the night was spent huddled in the brightly lit living room. Sleep and impossibility. I drifted in and out of consciousness, jolting awake at every creak of settling wood, every flicker of a bulb. Exhaustion warred with hypervigilance, fraying my nerves raw. Now, as dawn paints the mountain peaks in hues of rose and gold, I sit here, contemplating the path forward. The phenomena are undeniable, etched not just onto the house, but onto my psyche. The sounds, the ephemeral shapes, the tangible marks. This presence is real, a palpable weight in the air around me. My heart still leaps at the memory of the swaying silhouette in the corridor. Its purpose remains shrouded in mystery, but its desire for my attention is unmistakable. Is there more it wishes to reveal? Fear remains a cold companion, yet intertwined with it is a burgeoning, unnerving curiosity, a need to comprehend. My body is a tightly wound spring, my mind weary, but I'm not ready to abandon this place. I sought solitude and inspiration. I found something far more complex, far more demanding. Tonight, I will wait. I will watch. I will see what unfolds. Midnight held the house in its customary velvet grip. Most lamps extinguished, I drifted in the dim living room, letting the day ebb away before sleep. Outside, the neighborhood lay profoundly still, a silence usually received as balm, but tonight it felt taut, expectant. Then, slicing through the quiet, came a sound from overhead. Dull, insistent, a muffled scrape, followed by a soft thud, repeating with unnerving regularity every few seconds. It emanated from the ceiling, from the void above the hallway I'd scarcely considered in years. The attic. That forgotten space, a sealed square at the corridor's end, presiding over a folded stepladder, leaning sentinel against the plaster. The notion of ascending felt alien. Why trespass? It was surely just rafters and insulation, a repository of dust. Yet, the sound persisted, a rhythmic intrusion defying dismissal. I tried anchoring myself to the sofa's armrest, willing it away, pipes contracting in the cool night air, perhaps, a displaced nocturnal creature. But the cadence was too deliberate, too patterned. Scrape, thud, silence. Scrape, thud, silence. 5 minutes stretched into an eternity, bound by this metronome of unease. It could not be ignored. Flicking on the hallway light, I tilted my head back, regarding the small, pale hatch. A stool provided the necessary elevation. Reaching up, I pushed. Resistance. A thin membrane of dried paint sealed the edges, brittle and stubborn. A firmer shove, a crackle of breaking paint, and the wooden panel yielded, swinging upwards. A wave of desiccated air descended, stale, ancient, prickling my eyes, catching in my throat. A dry cough escaped me as I wiped my face on my sleeve. A torch seemed prudent. Retreating to the bedroom closet, I retrieved the compact LED beam, kept for power failures, its batteries fresh. A crisp, potent light flared to life. From a kitchen drawer, I fetched a dust mask, the memory of the attic's breath still sharp. An old jacket and work gloves followed, armor against the unknown. Thus equipped, I returned to the threshold, mounted the stool, and projected my head into the aperture. The flashlight's beam carved an unexpected vastness from the gloom. Larger, far larger than imagined, the attic wasn't some cramped crawlspace, but an airy chamber. Aged floorboards, scarred with gaps and fissures, stretched before me. No clutter, no stored detritus met my eye, at least not initially. Hoisting myself up, I tested the boards gingerly, their groans echoing in the sudden expanse. I swept the light in a slow arc. Against the far walls stood skeletal wooden shelves, utterly bare. Not a box, not a forgotten keepsake. The wood itself looked pale, abraded as if scoured by time or something else entirely. Then, in a far corner, I saw them, leaning against the rough-hewn wall arranged on the floorboards. Masks. 3 of them, clearly handmade, wooden yet strangely featureless. Where eyes should have been, there was only smooth carved wood. Small, simple slits suggested mouths. Their texture appeared coarse, primitive. The absence of eyes gave them a profoundly vacant aspect. Stepping closer, the light playing over their surfaces, I caught the scent of old timber and settled dust. No windows pierced this space. My torch provided the only true illumination, yet a peculiar ambient luminescence softened the absolute dark. Near the attic's center, the air seemed faintly brighter, imbued with a ghostly silver light, as if moonlight seeped through invisible cracks in the roof. I aimed the beam upwards. Solid timbers, no skylights, no vents. Impossible. The roof was sound, I knew that. Yet this faint, sourceless glow persisted, rendering some details visible without the torch's direct glare. The rhythmic sound had ceased. Silence pressed in, thick and watchful. Then, a new noise. A soft, dry rustling, like stiff fabric being dragged across wood. And beneath it, whispering. It drifted from behind one of the empty shelving units. At first, indistinct, a sibilant chorus of fragmented syllables. Moving with deliberate quiet, each footfall measured, I edged nearer. The murmurs resolved into voices, low, overlapping, a tapestry of hushed tones. Some words darted past too quickly, but then, unmistakable, I heard my own name. They were speaking of me. I froze, a sudden cold bloom in my chest. My heart hammered against my ribs. My palms grew slick inside the gloves. I swung the flashlight towards the source, the empty shelves, the bare wall behind. Nothing, yet the whispering persisted, undulating. My name again, uttered in different cadences, one voice slow, almost careful, another clipped, urgent. Speechless, I remained rooted, a silent observer of an unseen council. Though nothing moved in that corner, the very air felt altered, gaining weight, pressing in. My breathing grew shallow. A primal urge to flee warred with a desperate need to understand. Taking a hesitant step back, a floorboard groaned loudly under my boot. The whispering instantly hushed, then resumed, louder, more distinct. Fragments surfaced. Quiet. He's here. Come up. They were arguing, aware of my presence. Driven now, I began to circle the space, torch beam probing ahead, steps cautious. I peered behind each set of shelves. Only dust-furred corners, empty expanses, no wires, no hidden speakers. My gaze returned to the masks. Something was wrong. Their alignment had shifted. I distinctly remembered them side by side, facing outwards. Now the central mask was canted slightly, turned towards its neighbor on the right. Kneeling, I focused the light upon it. Reaching out a gloved hand, I touched the wood. Cool, dry, inert. Had a draft stirred it? Impossible. The air was unnervingly still, yet possessed a quality I could only describe as respiration. Beneath my boots, the floorboards seemed to subtly rise and fall, a faint, slow pulse, as if something vast drew breath beneath them. A tremor ran through the wood, vibrating up through the soles of my feet. Unnerved, I pressed my palm flat against the floor, solid, yet undeniably imbued with that gentle, rhythmic movement. A sharp scrape echoed from behind me. I spun around, flashlight held defensively before me. There, huddled low in a far corner, a shape resided. A condensation of shadow, darker than the surrounding gloom, crouched as if seeking concealment. Motionless, featureless, humanoid, perhaps, but indistinct. It remained utterly still, utterly silent. My throat tightened. Before I could force a word out, more whispering erupted from a different corner. Turning, I saw another shape, similarly crouched, and then another. Realization dawned. Several such forms occupied the periphery, pressed into the angles where walls met floor. Vague outlines in the strange twilight. 3, maybe 4 of them. They made no move to approach, simply watched, their presence underscored by the ceaseless, sibilant debate that rose and fell around me. My name, again and again. Who are you? The question ripped from my throat, sounding unnaturally loud in the confined quiet. The whispering continued unabated, offering no direct reply, only their internal discourse. I saw no faces, no eyes, no mouths upon the shadowed forms. Escape. The thought became an imperative. I took a step towards where the hatch should be, then scanned the floor and ceiling above. Gone. The familiar square opening, the ladder descending into the lighted hallway below, vanished. Only solid, uninterrupted floorboards met my gaze. Panic coiled, cold and sharp, in my stomach. My breath hitched. My heart drummed a frantic rhythm. Sweat beaded on my forehead, trickled down my back. Calm, I told myself. Stay calm. Retracing my steps towards the shelves, floorboards creaking their protest, I meticulously examined the area where I'd entered. This was the spot. The ladder should be right here, but the floor was seamless, the wall beyond it solid. I pressed my hand against the wood. Firm, real. I strained to hear any sound from the house below. The refrigerator's hum, the clock's tick. Nothing. Only the pervasive whispering and that soft, unsettling rustle. Trapped. I forced myself to move, circling the attic again, scrutinizing each corner, torch beam held steady. As I approached the first crouched shape, it seemed to dissolve, bleeding back into the deeper shadows, sliding away without a sound, without apparent locomotion. Reaching the corner, I found only dust motes dancing in the beam. A sneeze escaped me, my eyes stinging from the dry air. I moved to the next corner. The shape there too receded as I drew near, eluding the light like smoke. Yet I could still hear them, always just behind me, their murmurs a constant, shifting presence. I tried speaking again, stating my name, asserting my residence below, asking what they wanted. The voices merely continued their overlapping argument, stretching my name into strange configurations, debating my presence. I shouldn't be here. I belonged here. Contradictions tangled in the air. My jaw tightened, my grip on the flashlight becoming bone white. The masks drew my attention once more. Perhaps they were key. Walking over, I saw they had shifted again. Now all three faced inwards, a silent, eyeless conference. Kneeling, I picked one up, turning it over. The back was covered in faint scratch marks, shallow grooves crisscrossing in random patterns. Running a gloved finger over them, they felt almost fresh. I replaced the mask carefully. The floor beneath my knees felt subtly different here. Softer, like damp wood, though no moisture was visible. It held my weight, but I sensed a precariousness, a potential yielding I dared not test. Taking a deep, steadying breath, I focused on escape. Standing tall, I swept the light in a full circle. Empty shelves, floor-bound masks, shadowed corners, whispering darkness. I pushed against a shelving unit. It groaned, but held fast. I tried prying at a floorboard. It refused to yield. Knocking on the walls elicited only louder, more agitated whispers, as if warning me against disturbing their domain. Minutes passed. Then, a flicker of movement overhead. A ceiling board seemed to shift fractionally, a hairline crack appearing. Through it, a thin sliver of authentic moonlight pierced the gloom. Hope surged. Following that fragile beam, I moved beneath it, looking up. No hatch, no window, but the wood here looked thinner, somehow stressed. Reaching up, I pressed a hand against it. It felt oddly pliable. I pushed harder. A distinct crack echoed through the space. The whispering escalated, taking on a frantic, upset tone. My name? Sharp and loud now. Ignoring them, I pushed again, throwing my weight into it. Wood splintered. Dust rained down, coating me. Coughing, shielding my eyes, I persisted. My arms ached, but the desire for egress overruled everything. The whispers became a sibilant hiss. I heard skittering sounds from the corners, the shapes moving behind me. I refused to look back. Clamping the flashlight between my teeth, I used both hands, pulling, tearing, gouging at the weakened boards. Fingertips screamed against rough edges. Finally, a small board came loose, ripped free. A rush of blessedly cool, damp night air flowed through, the scent of outdoors, clean and real. Renewed, I tore at the opening, heedless of damage, desperate for escape. Another board splintered. I spat the flashlight out, gripping it again. A small, ragged hole now offered passage into darkness, but a different darkness, one that promised release. Reaching up, finding purchase, I hauled myself upwards. The hissing intensified, then abruptly cut off. As I pulled my torso through the jagged opening, something brushed against my calf. Light, ephemeral. I kicked out instinctively into empty air. Wriggling, scrambling, I propelled myself through the gap, not knowing where it led, only that it led away. Above the false ceiling lay a cramped crawl space. Insulation, beams, the familiar skeleton of house construction. This felt right. Shining the light around, I crawled carefully along the joists, Avoiding thin drywall, a few feet along, another opening appeared below. Peering down, I recognized the top shelf of my own bedroom closet. Relief washed over me. Lowering my legs, I dropped onto the blessedly familiar carpet, the scent of laundry detergent oddly grounding. Turning, I looked up. The gap I'd emerged from was merely a slightly loose board in the closet ceiling. No sign of forced entry, no gaping hole leading to a phantom attic. Reaching up, I felt the boards, solid, nailed securely in place. Impossible. I stood there, catching my breath, heart still galloping, clothes filmed in gray dust, hands trembling. Switching off the flashlight, I listened. The house breathed around me. The low hum of the refrigerator, the faint tick-tock from the hallway clock. Silence. Real silence. No whispering. Emerging from the closet, I checked the hallway. The attic hatch sat flush with the ceiling, undisturbed, sealed tight. I touched it. Just stiff, painted wood. I spent minutes just standing there, breathing deeply, coaxing my pulse back towards normalcy. What had just happened? My dusty gloves, the stale scent clinging to them, offered tangible proof. At the bathroom sink, I washed my hands, watching the fine gray powder swirl down the drain. Returning to the hallway, everything remained stubbornly normal. I turned on more lights, bathing the house in brightness, checking each room. Nothing amiss. The sound never returned. The attic remained inviolate, its hatch untouched by me again. I passed the remainder of that night wide awake, ensconced in the living room's full glare, listening with an acuity born of terror. No voices disturbed the quiet. No shapes flickered at the edge of vision. The house felt like mine once more, yet the memory remains indelible. The cavernous emptiness, the eyeless masks, the sibilant chorus speaking my name, the shrinking shapes in the corners, the visceral clench of fear, the sweat, the straining muscles, the suffocating panic when the way back disappeared. Its reality is branded onto me. Whether it was hallucination, a waking nightmare, or something else, I cannot say. I only know I went up there, and I came back down. The attic keeps its silence now, but every glance towards that ceiling carries the weight of its secret. The first encounter registered as mere background noise, a Tuesday morning hum at the Gilded Finch, the boutique where I curated adornments for others' lives. Among the silks and polished metals, he materialized, weathered but nondescript, adrift in a seafoam polo and khaki trousers, a man easily dissolved into any crowd. He inquired about my car, a crimson Kestrel parked curbside, posing some query about its gearbox configuration. My reply was courteous, yet deliberately opaque. 3 days hence, the background noise acquired static. He surfaced at the sun-drenched cafe where Chloe, my sister, and I shared midday sustenance, a full 15 miles distant from the boutique's gilded cage. Same polo, unsettlingly identical questions concerning the Kestrel. Chloe's gaze sharpened, registering the sudden metallic tang that infiltrated my minestrone, the tremor in my hand. "Elara, do you know that man?" she murmured, low and urgent, as his receding figure melted back into the pedestrian flow. A denial formed on my lips, even as a cold knot tightened deep within my gut. The ensuing fortnight saw coincidence unravel into calculated pursuit. He manifested outside my spin class studio, materialized near the fluorescent-lit aisles of the supermarket, loomed in the periphery of the cinema parking lot, where laughter and anticipation awaited with friends. Always the automotive interrogations, always the slight encroachment on personal space, always the lingering surveillance long after the pretense of conversation evaporated. Each appearance felt less random, more like a point meticulously plotted on an unseen map. Perhaps he possesses an unusual passion for kestrels, Anya, my colleague, offered, attempting levity when I finally voiced the growing unease. Yet, she began escorting me to the crimson car after closing, her phone subtly angled to capture his license plate the next time his nondescript sedan shadowed our lot. His inquiries shifted, subtly but unmistakably. No longer just the mechanics, but the name of my mechanic, the specific service station for oil changes, the arteries of asphalt I favored for my commute. Each question felt like a surveyor's marker driven into the landscape of my existence. My fabricated answers were met with a thin smile that never warmed his eyes, a chilling acknowledgement of the shared deception. I scrambled my routines, labyrinthine detours to work, unfamiliar grocery stores, cafes chosen on whims. Yet, resistance proved futile. Within the hushed aisles of a bookstore I'd never before entered, he emerged, musing aloud about my kestrel's fuel economy. Amidst the fragrant chaos of a garden center 30 miles from my doorstep, he materialized between rows of burgeoning roses, wondering about my preferred tire brand. Official channels offered scant solace. The police documented my account, their words laced with impotence. No overt threats, no statutes definitively breached. Document everything, they advised. Vary your patterns. Remain vigilant. A personal safety application bloomed on my phone screen, broadcasting my coordinates to trusted constellations of family and friends. Chloe helped install vigilant electronic eyes at my apartment threshold. At the Gilded Finch, Anya orchestrated a buddy system for breaks and locking up. Friends wove a tighter net of check-ins, ensuring solitude remained a choice, not an imposition. Still, he appeared, a persistent phantom, his questions gaining a quiet insistence, his smile a chilling vacancy. One evening, immersed in the pre-sale inventory ritual at the boutique, the city lights painting long shadows across the polished floor, I saw him. His car, a familiar silhouette parked across the thoroughfare, had been a silent sentinel for hours. Anya's vehicle sat beside mine, a hollow promise of companionship. She departed an hour prior, catching a ride with Liam. As the lock clicked shut, he unfolded himself from his driver's seat. Exquisite evening, his voice carried across the asphalt divide, closing the distance between us. Ideal weather for motoring. How fares that transmission? My fingers, slick with sudden perspiration, wrestled with the keys, yet I marshaled my voice into a semblance of calm. My brother's meeting me, I countered, the lie tasting like ash. He's on the force, due any second. A flicker of hesitation crossed his features before the empty smile resurfaced. Merely extending neighborly courtesy, he murmured, a new, sharper edge honing his tone. Curious, as my own transmissions being rather temperamental, perhaps we could compare findings. At that precise moment, twin beams of light sliced through the dimness. Liam hadn't driven off. He had been waiting, a silent guardian just around the block. His engine hummed reassuringly as he pulled alongside me. "Everything copacetic here?" The man retreated, hands raised in a pantomime of harmlessness. "Just discussing automobiles," he offered, but his gaze remained fixed on mine, an unnerving intensity that raised the fine hairs on my arms. He slipped back into his vehicle and merged with the night's traffic, leaving behind a residue of violation, a certainty that this was merely a pause, not cessation. The following day, armed with a meticulously compiled dossier, photographs, timestamps, locations, witness accounts, I sought a restraining order. The sheer weight of the documentation spoke a language the law could comprehend. The judge granted the petition, a fragile shield of paper against a determined adversary. Paper doesn't halt obsession, merely assigns consequences to its trespasses. News rippled through the local merchant community. Eyes sharpened behind shop counters, information flowed, warnings were shared. The Gilded Finch upgraded its surveillance systems. The sun-drenched cafe posted notices regarding patron safety, its staff newly trained to recognize the insidious choreography of stalking. At the community center, I enrolled in Ms. Vance's self-defense course, absorbing not just physical maneuvers, but psychological fortifications. She taught us the architecture of boundaries, the sanctity of intuition, the resonance of our own voices. "Civility," she asserted, her gaze sweeping across the room, "must never supersede safety." Chloe urged me to sell the kestrel, sever the tangible link. I refused. Surrendering my car, altering the entire geography of my life, that's capitulation, I told her. Instead, I had it meticulously swept for clandestine tracking devices, the windows imbued with a deeper tint. A dual-lens dashcam became its unblinking eye, small assertions of control in a landscape suddenly fraught with peril. The order held, largely. Direct approaches ceased, replaced by fleeting glimpses from afar. A figure noting details, his focus invariably tethered to the crimson kestrel. Proving persistent surveillance remained beyond the law's grasp, yet police patrols increased their cadence through my known territories. Other women began to cautiously share their own narratives, echoes of similar intrusions. Not always him, but others like him, masters of weaponizing innocuous questions, twisting shared interests into instruments of harassment. A network coalesced, tendrils of shared experience weaving a tapestry of mutual support. The Gilded Finch transformed, periodically hosting workshops on safety, boundary assertion, the subtle lexicon of red flags. What began as one woman's fearful response blossomed into a communal resource, teaching not just defense, but solidarity. Last week, Maya, a teenager with apprehension clouding her young face, entered the boutique. She spoke of a man, persistent questions about her car near her after-school job. Without hesitation, I connected her to our burgeoning collective, the police liaisons, Ms. Vance, the community advocates. Sometimes his shadow still flickers at the edges of my vision as I navigate the town, but isolation no longer defines my reality. A vigilant community watches with me, poised to react. His perceived power diminishes with each shared story, each business refusing tolerance, each woman learning the profound wisdom of her own instincts. My crimson kestrel, once a beacon for unwanted attention, has metamorphosed into an emblem of defiance. I maintain it meticulously, polish its surfaces, a daily affirmation against being driven away. Those questions, once sharp incursions, now echo as the failed stratagems of a man unable to comprehend refusal. Cars, I realized, were merely his chosen camouflage, a guise of harmlessness under which he mapped vulnerabilities. But in his relentless pursuit, he inadvertently schooled me, and countless others, in a vital truth. There are no just questions when their purpose is invasion. Trust the tremor of unease, document the patterns, and never, ever discount the formidable strength of a community united. Midnight congregations in Oakhaven Square. Quaint, I thought initially, a relic of local folklore. By the third witnessing, the quaintness had curdled into something visceral, something deeply wrong. This slumbering hamlet, draped in deceptive tranquility, cradled a malignancy, and my own burgeoning curiosity was poised to drag me into its depths. Elias Vance, that's the name I brought to Oakhaven barely 2 months prior, stitched onto the lapel of a new life as the township's caseworker. Fresh from the academic cocoon, brimming with ideals, I'd envisioned a gentle immersion into my vocation within this small town tableau. What unfolded instead was a descent into a waking nightmare. Oakhaven presented a facade of immaculate charm. Gingerbread Victorian homes stood sentinel along pristine streets. Blossoms erupted in a riot of color from every garden plot, and greetings were offered with unwavering smiles. Yet, those smiles were unsettlingly uniform, never quite igniting the eyes above them. The dissonance first snagged my attention with Mrs. Gable, a frail matriarch for whom I was arranging meal assistance. Her discourse on progeny flowed smoothly, her smile laminated onto her features, immutable even as she recounted the passing of her husband, a rictus of enforced pleasantry. Later, within the confines of the town diner, I intercepted a conspiratorial murmur between two men, thick as molasses, which abruptly dissolved into vapid pronouncements about precipitation the instant my shadow fell near. Their faces snapped back into that same unnerving, placid mask. But the midnight assemblies shattered any lingering notions of mere eccentricity, an accidental discovery born of late-night casework, figures moving like wraiths through the darkened lanes, converging on the town square. Compelled by an instinct I couldn't name, I shadowed them, keeping to the deeper pools of darkness. The sight that greeted me sent tendrils of ice coiling around my spine. It seemed the entire populace had convened, forming a silent circumference around the antiquated central fountain. A low, monotonous chant rose, a collective susurration in a tongue utterly alien, hypnotic, and chilling. At the circle's heart stood Mayor Thorne, clutching a heavy, leather-bound tome that radiated antiquity. I shrank behind the rough bark of an oak, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. This defied reality, ripped from the celluloid of some forgotten horror film. Yet, as I watched, Thorne elevated a knife, its edge catching the lunar gleam like a sliver of captured moonlight. A young woman detached herself from the circle, extending her palm. The blade descended. A dark bead of crimson welled and dripped into the fountain's stagnant water. A gasp must have escaped me, for in perfect synchronicity, every head pivoted, dozens of eyes reflecting a faint, phosphorescent glimmer, locking onto my concealment. I fled, raw instinct propelling me, not daring to halt until the flimsy security of my apartment door was bolted, the curtains drawn tight against the night. Dawn scrubbed the town clean, bleaching the night's terrors into implausibility. Citizens resumed their routines, smiles deployed, waves exchanged with a clockwork precision that now seemed deeply sinister. I began to register the subtle indicators of profound wrongness, the unnatural perfection of the lawns, the inhabitants' movements possessed of an almost automated grace, the unsettling vacuum where petty crime and human friction ought to exist in a community this size. A part of me desperately sought refuge in explanations of stress, of sleeplessness conjuring phantoms, but the marrow-deep certainty remained. The ritual was real. My inquiries began tentatively, cautiously. I sifted through brittle newspaper archives, hunting for anomalies in Oakhaven's placid narrative. What surfaced was profoundly disturbing. A recurring pattern emerged, stark and chilling. Periodic evaporations of outsiders, tourists, drifters, newcomers who failed to take root, all vanishing without a whisper. The deeper I excavated Oakhaven's sedimentary layers of history, the more grotesque the portrait became. This town hadn't been settled by pioneers seeking prosperity, but by adherents of some light-shunning doctrine in the 19th century, a sect convinced that ritual sacrifice of outsiders guaranteed their own continued vitality and fortune. Generation by insidious generation, they had woven a tapestry of secrecy, shielding their practices from the glare of the modern world. Action was imperative. This festering secret demanded exposure, but trust was a defunct currency here. The chief of police had stood within that chanting circle, as had my own supervisor at the social services agency. Every smiling face potentially concealed complicity. My recourse was evidence. A discreetly purchased microcamera became my silent confederate, documenting the fleeting moments when masks slipped, revealing glimpses of something cold and other beneath the human guise. The peculiar sigils etched into the foundation stones of venerable buildings, the chilling chants captured from afar that raised goose flesh upon playback. Weeks bled into a miasma of escalating paranoia. Eyes followed me. Footsteps echoed mine on empty streets. Mrs. Gable's hand, during an accidental encounter at the grocer's, lingered on my arm, a spider-like caress beneath the guise of apology. My apartment door, once found inexplicably unlocked despite my meticulous habit. Then, the warnings escalated from subtle pressure to overt threat. A feathered sacrifice left on the welcome mat. A slip of paper in my mailbox, bearing the stark imperative: assimilate or vanish. The discovery of my car's brake lines, expertly severed. Escape became the only imperative, the evidence a desperate passport to the outside world. Yet Oakhaven itself seemed to conspire against departure. My vehicle would inexplicably fail. Sudden, violent storms would render roads impassable. On one terrifying occasion, I drove for hours, only to find myself inexplicably navigating back into the town's familiar, suffocating embrace, a geographical Mobius strip. The culmination arrived under the baleful gaze of the harvest moon, hanging like a blood orange in the ink-black sky. My escape was planned, bags secreted away, when a firm knock resonated on my apartment door. Opening it revealed Mayor Thorne, flanked by several town elders, their faces impassive stone in the hallway light. "Elias," he began, his voice smooth as river stones, yet chipped with ice. "A conversation is overdue." They flowed into my small living space, their presence instantly shrinking the room, and a wave of cold certainty washed over me. They knew. "You possess an admirable curiosity regarding our Oak Haven," Thorne observed, easing into my armchair with proprietary familiarity. "We prize inquiry, Elias. It introduces vital new perspectives, but unchecked, it festers, becomes problematic." I held my ground, battling the tremor in my voice. "I know about the rituals, the sacrifices, this cult. I have proof. If I disappear, it all goes to the authorities." Thorne's smile remained fixed, yet the ambient temperature plummeted. "Ah, Elias, your grasp remains superficial. This tradition spans centuries. Do you imagine yourself the first pebble tossed against our fortress?" At his gesture, an elder produced a familiar volume. My blood turned to slush as I recognized my own journal, my chronicle of dread. "Your diligence is noted," Thorne murmured, leafing through the pages. "Quite thorough. Under different circumstances, you might have integrated beautifully, but your current trajectory, well, it necessitates a difficult resolution." Instinctively, I retreated, eyes darting for an egress they had already silently blocked. "You fail to comprehend equilibrium, Elias," Thorne continued, rising. "Oak Haven demands balance. Our prosperity, our unnatural longevity, requires reciprocation. Willing participants are preferred, naturally. Less complicated. But for cases such as yours," his gaze hardened, "allowances are made." As he spoke, a subcutaneous tremor ran through the elders. Their skin seemed to ripple, features subtly blurring, bone structures rearranging beneath the surface into configurations not entirely human. That same unholy luminescence I'd witnessed in the square kindled anew within their eyes. "A final choice presents itself," Thorne declared, his voice resonating with newfound power. In his hand, the sacrificial knife reappeared, wickedly sharp. "Join us, willingly, become one with Oak Haven in spirit and flesh." He left the alternative unspoken, hanging heavy and lethal in the charged air. Or, trapped, encircled by shifting abominations, offered a cursed allegiance by their master, my decision was instantaneous. Flight. The ensuing moments dissolved into a primal, adrenaline-fueled blur, a phantasmagoria of pursuit through Oak Haven's shadowed arteries, the town itself seeming to awaken, imbued with a collective, malevolent will. By some miracle of terror-lent speed, I reached the town limits, lungs searing, legs screaming. As I stumbled across the invisible demarcation line, a chilling, unearthly howl tore through the night behind me. A backward glance revealed the townsfolk halted abruptly at Oakhaven's edge, a silent tableau of thwarted predators, unable or unwilling to pursue beyond their cursed domain. My frantic sprint ended miles away, collapsing before the indifferent facade of the next town's sheriff's station. My fevered narrative, predictably, was dismissed as trauma-induced fantasy. Deputies dispatched to Oakhaven reported finding nothing amiss, only bucolic normalcy. I never looked back. I fled the state, shed my name like snakeskin, attempted to graft a new existence onto the wreckage of the old. But the Oakhaven stain remains indelible, the memories eternally vivid. The chanting rituals under a cold moon, the predatory smiles, the pervasive, hidden wrongness. Sometimes, in the dead quiet of night, a phantom susurration seems to drift on the wind, and I am forced to wonder how many other Oakhavens lie concealed beneath pastoral camouflage, their sinister truths masked by picket fences and neighborly waves. How many unsuspecting souls are lured into their webs, destined to become statistics in forgotten archives. Escape was merely physical. The horror of Oakhaven is a permanent resident in my soul, and I live with the chilling certainty that somewhere Mayor Thorne and his inhuman flock endure, watching patient predators waiting for the inevitable moment my vigilance slips. Because once you've glimpsed behind their mask, neutrality ceases to exist. You are either assimilated or you are sustenance. The sigil etched deep into the grain of my bedroom door. Seeing it bloom there in the pre-dawn gloom confirmed an error not merely terrible, but absolute. This place, this Oakhaven refuge, wasn't some rustic haven tucked off the highway. It was a focal point, a nexus pulsing with something old and unwell. And I, fool that I was, stood precisely at its core. Stopping in Oakhaven had formed no part of the itinerary. A straightforward drive, a visit to my sister, one state removed. That was the plan. But the sky had wept sheets. The traffic congealed into a static beast, and beneath the hood, my car began a low, percussive lament that spoke of imminent failure. Such were the forces compelling a deviation from my no detours creed. As my wheels whispered onto the town's main thoroughfare, the sun bled into the horizon, stretching shadows like skeletal fingers across facades of impossible quaintness. Oakhaven presented itself as a meticulously crafted illusion, shops with pristine windows, smiles worn like Sunday best, a perfection too deliberate, too fragile. Exhaustion, however, dulled the edge of my suspicion. At the street's terminus stood the Gilded Acorn, a grand Victorian edifice, its wide porch festooned with unnervingly vibrant flower boxes. A small, illuminated sign hummed, "Vacancy," and a breath I hadn't realized I was holding escaped me. The woman who answered my knock embodied the archetype of benevolent matriarch, hair like spun moonlight, coiled severely, eyes magnified to gentle orbs behind delicate spectacles, apron bearing the faint ghost of flower. Welcome to Oakhaven, dear," she offered, her smile a beacon of warmth. "I'm Ilara. You look utterly spent. A warm plate and a soft pillow await, I should think." Her assessment was undeniable, as Ilara guided me through hallways, whispering with the scent of beeswax and something else, something faintly metallic. Her voice wove a tapestry of local lore and meteorological musings. For the first time in agonizing hours, a measure of tension eased within me. The room itself was a period piece, four-poster bed draped in heavy damask, furniture gleaming with age and polish. Lavender and crisp linen perfumed the air. Supper is served precisely at 7, downstairs in the great room, Alara instructed, pressing a heavy brass key into my palm. Do try not to be tardy. Silas is preparing his specialty tonight. Gratitude murmured. I secured the room and succumbed to the simple luxury of a hot shower. Descending later, I found the great room already humming with low conversation. A congregation, other lodgers perhaps, mingled with faces that seemed etched into the very plaster of the town, gathered around a long, formidable table. At its head sat Silas, Alara's husband, a man built like weathered oak, deftly carving a roast whose aroma was almost intoxicatingly rich. As I found an offered seat, a detail snagged my attention. Each person present wore an identical adornment, a medallion, burnished silver, bearing the intricate, unsettling sigil I would later find upon my door. A local custom, I presumed, dismissing the flicker of unease. The conversation embraced me, a gentle tide pulling me into its current. Queries about my journey, my intended destination, the shape of my life beyond Oak Haven's borders, they flowed with an unnerving intimacy. I found myself divulging fragments I typically guarded, seduced by their rapt attention, their performance of profound interest. Only when lifting my fork for a second portion of the succulent roast did a colder realization surface. No one else was eating. The plates remained untouched canvases. Every eye was fixed upon me, their collective gaze possessing a weight, an unnerving avidity. Is everything all right? My voice felt thin, my fork suspended mid-air. Alara produced a laugh, crystalline and sharp, yet it failed to thaw the frost in her eyes. Perfectly, dear. We're simply delighted you find the meal agreeable. We don't often receive travelers passing through Oak Haven. The remainder of the meal dissolved into a hazy progression of sensations. A profound lethargy began to drape itself over my limbs, a leaden weight settling behind my eyes. The long drive, the substantial meal, convenient scapegoats. Excusing myself with apologies for my weariness, I navigated the ascent to my room. The staircase seemed to cant unpredictably. The walls breathed in and out. I fumbled with the lock, tumbling through the door just as the floor tilted definitively. Darkness surged, swallowing a final fragmented thought. Wrong. Something is deeply wrong. I surfaced violently, gasping in a darkness thick as velvet. Disorientation clung like cobwebs. A blade of moonlight pierced the heavy curtains, slicing across the room to illuminate the violation. There, gouged into the wood of my door, pulsed the sigil from the pendants. The sigil. Awareness crashed through the fog. Cold, sharp, absolute. I scrambled from the bed, a hammer pounding behind my temples, my mouth a wasteland of parched cotton. Drugged. The word echoed in the sudden, stark clarity. They drugged the food. My hand flew to the doorknob, locked, bolted fast from the exterior. The window, then, my next frantic hope. Tearing back the curtain revealed not glass, but solid timber, nailed securely into the frame. Trapped. Utterly. Panic coiled, A serpent in my gut, but instinct screamed for control. Think. Escape. A desperate scan of the room yielded nothing. No potential weapon. No tool for leverage. Whoever curated this chamber had been meticulous, stripping it bare of anything resembling aid. Standing frozen in the oppressive silence, I caught it. A sound beginning faintly from below, swelling into a low guttural chant, rhythmic, ancient, alien. Pressing my ear against the floorboards, I strained to decipher the syllables, but the language scraped against my understanding, fundamentally other. The cadence intensified, punctuated by the measured tread of footsteps ascending the stairs. My heart became a frantic drum against my ribs. Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Cornered. The lock turned with an oily click. The door swung inward. Alara stood framed in the opening, yet the kindly innkeeper was gone, replaced by something else entirely. Her eyes shone with a terrifying, zealous light. Her smile stretched into a predator's grin. "The hour is come, my dear," she announced, her voice resonating with an unnatural depth. "The sleeper stirs and requires appeasement." Two figures materialized behind her, their grips like iron vices on my arms before thought could translate to action. I fought, a pathetic, clumsy struggle against the lingering poison in my veins. They propelled me from the room, down the protesting stairs. The great room below was unrecognizable. Furniture shoved violently against the walls created a stark arena, dominated now by a massive stone altar that radiated a palpable cold, an altar that had most certainly not been there hours before. Around it stood the dinner guests, transformed, swathed in hooded robes, their silver pendants pulsing with a sickly internal luminescence. Forced towards the stone slab, my mind fractured. This isn't real. Absurd. A fever dream induced by bad roadside fare. Any second, the rough sheets of my own bed would materialize, but the brutal chill of the stone against my back as they laid me upon it screamed reality. The chanting escalated, a physical pressure building in the air, making my ears throb. A vibration hummed through the very floorboards. Silas approached, bearing aloft a wickedly curved ornate dagger. His eyes were voids, perfect obsidian absorbing all light. For generations beyond count, we have guarded the covenant, he intoned, his voice filling the cavernous space. For generations, we have offered sustenance to the sleeper, ensuring its slumber, preserving the fragile peace. Your essence, freely given, guarantees another cycle. A scream built in my throat, a plea, a bargain, but silence choked me. Paralysis, born of terror or the drug's lingering tendrils, held me fast. Silas raised the dagger, its edge catching the flickering candlelight like captured lightning. In that terminal instant, staring into the abyss, something primal shattered within me. Fueled by sheer, unadulterated desperation, I ripped one arm free, my fingers closing instinctively around the heavy silver pendant dangling from Silas's neck. Contact sent an electric jolt through my entire being. The pendant flared white-hot, searing my flesh. A scream tore through the room, horrifyingly resonant, yet utterly alien to my own voice. It was ancient, vast, and filled with untold agony. The robed figures recoiled, faces contorting into masks of pure terror. The pressure in the room reached an impossible crescendo. Then, with a sound like the universe tearing itself asunder, everything dissolved into blackness. Consciousness returned on the hard shoulder of a deserted highway, miles evaporating between me and Oakhaven. My car idled beside me, humming contentedly, miraculously healed. No trace remained of the town, the inn, the robed figures, the altar. Nothing to corroborate the nightmare, save for the heavy, intricately carved silver pendant still clutched fiercely in my hand, its metal cool now against my skin. And sometimes, in the deepest hours of the night, when the world outside is still, I hear it, the faint rhythmic echo of chanting on the edge of hearing. The story of Oakhaven remains mine alone. Who, after all, would lend credence to such a tale? The pendant found its resting place at the bottom of a distant river. I relocated, sought anonymity in the urban sprawl, attempted to bury the memory. But the knowledge is branded onto me now. Beneath the placid surfaces of forgotten towns, ancient entities dream fitfully, and occasionally they awaken with an appetite. Road trips are a relic of a former life. Small towns remain unvisited territories on my map. And bed and breakfasts, I would sooner sleep under the open, indifferent sky. One never truly knows when the welcoming smile is merely an invitation to the main course. The diesel heart of my Leviathan had scarcely quieted its deep thrumming when shadows detached themselves from the deeper gloom beyond the headlight wash. 3 figures, their eyes caught the artificial glare, predatory pinpricks in the stark Nevada night. This wasn't slumber beckoning, it was a snare sprung shut, and I, Silas, was the quarry caught within the teeth of this forsaken rest stop. For 20 years, I've piloted these steel behemoths across the continent's arteries, a nomad wedded to the hum of the road. Strange sights are the mile markers of this life, the desert's mirages and the midnight apparitions, but nothing had foreshadowed the cold dread coalescing now. This run, hauling delicate electronics from the windy city toward the city of angels, had stretched long. Nevada unfolded an immense, indifferent canvas under a star-pricked sky, and a bone-deep weariness began its insidious crawl, blurring the highway's hypnotic white strokes. To push on was to court disaster. Then, the sign materialized. A rest area, spectral in the distance. Not my usual waypoint, this place. A faint dissonance chimed in the back corridors of my mind, a warning unheeded. Fatigue, that great betrayer of caution, whispered promises of brief oblivion, and I yielded. The turnoff led to a concrete island adrift in a sea of sagebrush, seemingly deserted save for a battered pickup slumbering in the farthest corner, likely another soul seeking refuge from the relentless miles. I eased my rig into a berth, cut the power. Silence slammed down, absolute and unnerving after the engine's constant song. Just as I reached for the sleeper curtain, motion snagged my periphery. 3 men advancing, spreading out like wolves circling prey. Their gait was deliberate, purposeful. No casual greeting was intended here. My fingers found the lock switch, a flimsy gesture against determined intrusion. The one who seemed their leader, tall, graced with a ragged beard, stepped fully into the headlights' unforgiving stage. "Evening, driver," his voice rasped, a tempting bonhomie, but laced with something jagged. "Looks like you might need a hand." A smile felt alien on my face, but I summoned one, keeping my tone level. "Appreciate it, but I'm fine, just grabbing 40 winks." His answering smile was glacial, never reaching his eyes. "Oh, I think we should insist. It ain't safe out here, all by your lonesome. Why not step out? Join us for a bit." My thoughts scattered, then regrouped, frantic, hemmed in the cab, outnumbered, likely outmatched. Driving off meant plowing through them. A different kind of prison awaited down that road, even if I escaped this one. Time. I needed to weave time. "Look, gents," I offered. "Schedule's tight. Appreciate the concern, truly, but I should roll. Let's just call this a night, eh?" The thin veneer of civility dissolved. "Not the way this plays out, driver. Option 1, you climb down, nice and cooperative. Option 2, we pull you out. You really don't want option 2. A glance at my phone confirmed the void. No bars. Miles from anywhere. No cavalry was riding over the horizon, stalling, desperate. "What is it you're after?" The man flanking the leader's left, sinewy, with ink crawling up his neck like invasive vines, chuckled, a dry scraping sound. "What we want it all, old-timer. That big box of yours is holding something sweet, isn't it? So, hijackers and informed ones. How else? The cargo manifest wasn't exactly broadcast. Listen, I counted, mind racing like the Pistons moments before. That load's insured up to the eyeballs. The company eats the loss. Let me walk away. I say nothing. Take the truck, the goods, everything. I'll thumb it to the next town. Nobody gets hurt." The leader tilted his head, a flicker of consideration, then extinguished it. "Good try. Can't risk it though. You've seen us now. You're coming along. Got a quiet place for you to wait things out." I knew that euphemism. Once the cargo was secured, I became inconvenient baggage. Men like these didn't leave loose threads dangling. As they edged closer, my gaze swept the cab. Tire iron? Too slow. Fire extinguisher? Maybe. Then my eyes landed on the CB radio. An old Sentinel, mostly kept for the nostalgia of crackling voices across lonely miles. Cell phones were the norm now. But tonight, that relic was my only prayer. I lunged, slapping the power switch, snatching the mic. "Mayday! Mayday!" The words tore from my throat. "This is Dust Devil. Under attack, hijackers, at the derelict rest stop. Marker 237. Any ears on this channel? Repeat, under attack." Surprise flared in the leader's eyes, instantly hardening into fury. "Shouldn't have done that," he snarled, hand diving inside his jacket. No time to see the reveal. I slammed the gear shift, stomped the accelerator. The rig roared, bucking forward, scattering them like startled crows. A sharp crack. My driver's side mirror disintegrated into glittering shards as I fishtailed onto the highway. They were firing. Pedal met floor, begging the old engine for every ounce of power. In the remaining mirror, the pickup screamed out of the rest area, its headlights swelling rapidly, closing the distance. My truck had muscle, but against that lighter pursuer, it was a draft horse chasing a greyhound. The CB mic stayed clutched in my fist. I kept broadcasting location, situation, a running commentary of terror into the seemingly dead air. Silence answered. Was anyone listening? The pickup bumped my trailer, a jarring shunt. I saw the passenger lean out, clutching something long, metallic. Another shot echoed, and the truck shuddered violently. Tires. They were aiming for my tires. Desperate, I started weaving, a clumsy, lumbering dance across both lanes, trying to present a shifting target. It bought moments, but bled speed. They drew closer, relentlessly. Just as despair began to crystallize, the CB crackled, spitting static, and then the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. Dispatch 7 to Mayday caller. Confirm you're 20. Dust Devil. Relief surged, potent as adrenaline. Eastbound, Interstate 80, maybe 5 miles past marker 237. Hostile vehicle pursuing, armed. 10-4, Dust Devil. Units en route, converging. Maintain evasion if possible. Another shot slammed home, this one punching through the cab wall, burying itself in the dash inches from my knee. Getting tough, I yelled back, voice strained thin. Understood. Roadblock established approximately 2 miles ahead your position. See the lights. Maintain speed. We will create passage. My knuckles were white bone pressing through skin on the wheel. 2 miles. Just hold together for 2 more miles. The pickup rammed my rear again. A solid, bone-jarring impact, trying to spin me out, run me off the asphalt lifeline. I fought the wheel, channeling every instinct honed over countless nights like this, yet unlike this. 1 mile. Distant strobes painted the horizon. The pickup hit again, harder. The wheel kicked violently. For a heart-stopping second, I wrestled the edge of control. 1/2 mile. The roadblock flared into view, a barricade of cruisers flashing blue and red across the interstate. Then, as promised, 2 central cars peeled apart, revealing a gap barely wider than my rig. I aimed for it, a silent prayer on my lips, urging the groaning metal onward. Behind me, the shriek of tortured tires signaled the pickup's frantic attempt to brake. I blew through the opening, the displaced air rocking the patrol cars. My mirror showed the pickup skidding sideways, instantly swarmed by officers, weapons leveled. Over. It was over. I coasted a little further down the highway, the tremor in my hands making it hard to shift into park. As the adrenaline tide receded, the cold reality washed in. How close the call. That ancient CB. The following days were a blur of statements, flashing badges, and the slow processing of survival. The men, it transpired, were cogs in a well-oiled machine, preying on haulers across state lines. My cargo, my voice cutting through the static, had helped unravel their network. I still drive, The lure of the open highway, the endless ribbon unwinding before me, remains potent, but vigilance is my new co-pilot. The CB is never off now. Its quiet hiss is a comforting presence, and every time the miles carry me past that particular stretch of Nevada desert, past that ghost of a rest stop, a quiet acknowledgement goes out to the twist of fate, the whim of nostalgia that kept an old radio within reach, because out here, under the vast indifferent sky, any night can fray into a fight for your life. Sometimes salvation isn't a miracle, just an obsolete box and a calm voice emerging from the darkness. Dispatch 7 to Mayday. Caller. The city had pressed in on Elias for months, a relentless weight of glowing rectangles and synthetic noise. An escape wasn't just desired, it was a necessity, a gasp for air. So, he sought the antithesis, solitude, raw and unmediated, camping alone for just 2 nights. No digital tethers, no demands, only the rumored tranquility of the deep woods. He charted a course for a pinpoint campsite near Stillwater Gap, a hamlet clinging precariously to the edge of obscurity, barely a smudge on most maps. He arrived as the afternoon light began to thicken, pulling his car onto the deserted gravel patch. The air hung still and heavy with pine. Tent erected, a fragile dome against the wilderness, Elias surveyed his temporary kingdom, utterly empty, exactly the void he craved. Just him, the towering sentinels of spruce and fir, and a narrow path snaking down towards the murmur of unseen water somewhere below. An enveloping privacy settled over the clearing, a profound isolation that felt less like loneliness and more like liberation. He coaxed a fire to life, its flames licking the twilight air, cooked a simple meal, and surrendered to the forest's hushed symphony. The trill of a late bird, the sigh of wind through branches, the intimate crackle and pop of the fire. As dusk bled purple across the sky, the knots of tension, tightened over months of urban strife, began to loosen within him. A profound calm, unfamiliar and welcome, settled deep in his bones. The first passage through darkness was blessedly unremarkable. Elias burrowed into his sleeping bag, the unfamiliar chorus of the woods a lullaby, and sleep claimed him. He surfaced occasionally, adrift in the novel sensations of sleeping on the earth, but nothing disturbed the peace. Dawn arrived crisp and clear. He rose, feeling scrubbed clean, brewed coffee over the fire's embers, and let the day unfold without agenda. He wandered, following the creek trail, letting thoughts drift like pollen on the breeze, the forest absorbing his anxieties. Returning to his camp, as the sun slanted low, painting the trees in gold in the long shadows, Elias stopped. Something was amiss. Impressions marred the soft earth around his tent. Not his own. The tread was wrong, the size larger, pressed deeper. Someone had walked here, circled his small haven. A scan of the tree line revealed nothing but impassive bark and shifting leaves. No other cars, no voices, no sign of human presence since his arrival. His mind scrambled for benign explanations. A ranger on patrol, but there'd been no sound of an engine, no official greeting. A prickle of unease traced its way up his spine. Perhaps a hiker passing through. He tried to dismiss it, stoking the fire with renewed vigor, attempting to recapture the earlier serenity. Yet the feeling persisted, tenacious and cold. He was being observed. Night descended like a shroud. Elias huddled near the fire, its flickering light a small defiance against the encroaching dark. He strained to hear beyond the fire's gentle hiss, the wind's whisper. Every so often, a sound would detach itself from the background hum, the sharp snap of a distant twig, an indistinct rustle from the undergrowth just beyond the light's reach. He'd sweep his flashlight beam across the blackness, illuminating only dancing leaves and impenetrable shadow. Eventually, exhaustion warred with apprehension, and he retreated into the tent, zipping the thin fabric close like a final, fragile prayer. He lay rigid, ears straining against the profound, almost watchful quiet of the woods. Sleep, when it finally came, was shallow and uneasy. He woke abruptly in the dead heart of the night. Silence, absolute, save for the faint, dying crackle of the fire outside. His mind, thick with sleep, struggled to grasp the reason for his sudden alertness. Then he heard it, the soft, deliberate crunch of a footstep on the forest floor. Close, terribly close. Elias's heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the stillness. He held his breath, listening. Another step, slow, measured. Someone was pacing, methodically circling his tent. His hand, slick with sweat, fumbled for the flashlight. He clicked it on, the beam illuminating the tent's thin walls, revealing nothing beyond the taut fabric. The footsteps ceased. Silence rushed back in, thick and suffocating. Had they gone? Relief flickered, fragile. Then a soft, dragging sound, like coarse cloth brushing against the nylon side of the tent, inches from his head. Elias froze, his grip on the flashlight bone white. Should he shout, make a noise, reveal himself? He remained utterly still, scarcely breathing, a captive audience to the unseen presence. The scraping stopped. A pause. Then the crunch of footsteps again, moving away, receding slowly until they were swallowed by the immense silence of the woods. He lay there for what felt like an eternity, pinned by fear, mind racing futilely. Who? What? Escape the tent? Check? The paralysis held him fast until the first tentative gray fingers of dawn probed the fabric. When Elias finally unzipped the tent and crawled out, the world seemed deceptively normal. Ashy embers glowed faintly in the fire pit. The wood stood silent. No one. But his gaze fell to the ground, and the breath hitched in his throat. Footprints. A clear, deeply impressed ring encircling the tent, each print distinct, as if the walker had paused with each step. And from that circle, a single track led away, vanishing into the dense trees. A cold dread twisted in his gut, quickly followed by a surge of helpless anger. This wasn't random. Someone had been out here, playing a cruel game, deliberately stoking his fear. The urge to follow, to confront, flared hot and reckless, but died just as quickly. Alone, no signal, miles from anywhere. It was madness. The day passed under a pall of anxiety. Every shadow seemed to deepen. Every rustle of leaves felt like a footfall. Elias kept glancing over his shoulder, the vast, silent woods now feeling like a cage with unseen eyes. He fed the fire obsessively all day, needing the motion, the semblance of control, the defiant blaze against the wilderness that had turned hostile. As evening drew in again, he sat, with his back pressed against the tent, flashlight clutched in one hand, knife resting on his knee. His gaze swept the tree line relentlessly, searching for any flicker of movement. Each natural sound of the forest settling into night was now magnified, distorted, a potential threat that sent adrenaline jolting through him. Later, deep into the night, the footsteps returned. That same slow, inexorable crunch through the leaf litter. Elias's hand tightened on the flashlight, the beam cutting a trembling swathe towards the sound. His heart pounded a frantic rhythm against his ribs. The steps halted, just at the edge of the fire's throw, where light surrendered to darkness. A silhouette coalesced, indistinct, yet undeniably human in form. Tall, utterly still, watching. "Who's there?" Elias called out, his voice thin, embarrassingly shaky. Silence answered him. The figure remained motionless, a statue carved from shadow. Fear curdled with anger. "I don't know what you want," he shouted, voice trembling, but louder now. "But you need to leave." Nothing. No response. No movement. It just stood there, patient, observant, waiting. Elias snatched a burning branch from the fire, raising it like a primitive torch, its embers scattering sparks into the night. He took a hesitant step forward. In that instant, the figure dissolved, melting backward into the absolute blackness between the trees, as if it had been nothing more than a trick of the light, a phantom woven from the night itself. Elias remained awake until dawn painted the eastern sky, the charred stick clutched in his hand, his eyes raw from scanning the unyielding darkness. The figure did not reappear. Morning arrived, pale and fragile. He didn't eat, didn't bother properly dousing the fire. He tore down his camp with frantic, clumsy movements, driven by a singular imperative: escape. Throwing his gear into the car, he risked one last glance back at the clearing. His heart seized. There, etched into the damp earth, precisely where the figure had stood sentinel, was a single clear set of footprints, leading away into the silent, waiting woods.